Okay, so it's Tuesday and I said I was going to update you on the decision that they made. And basically yesterday, about an hour or two after we spoke to the nurse about the whole thing, she said that King's will not let us go ahead with treatment unless everything is finalised beforehand. So either they get the blood tests back or we change it to a no, basically. And so we were very frustrated and annoyed because obviously this has been going on now. I think I first started speaking to them in August, and it's crazy to me that they asked for this information like 2 weeks before I'm due on, knowing that if we said yes, the bloods take 4 to 6 weeks, and we've just waited 4 to 6 weeks in Albania for the last set of results from King's. So had they just told us beforehand, we could have waited that 4 to 6 weeks for everything to get done, rather than do all that and then have to be pushed back another month or two. She said that because of my period is due on Sunday, because my period is due on Sunday, either we do it this month, but we can't do it in December because King's close on the 14th of December. Because of my cycle, I would have to have the extraction after that, so it'd have to be January. So either we do it next week or January, which is frustrating because we're going to miss another 2 months of just getting this over and done with. So she also mentioned, I'm not sure if I said this in the like yesterday in the part of the video, but she said that we're the first couple she's had in 10 years to say yes to allowing their partner to use the embryos if one of you dies or is mentally incapable, which is crazy to me that everybody says no. And then also with that, the fact that we've said yes and we're the first couple she's had in 10 years experience, but also that we're asking questions. So there's like lots of grey areas, and I think I was getting confused beforehand thinking this is the case for everything, where actually it's just if you're dead or mentally incapable, but I was kind of putting every scenario in there. So I was like, what if I'm dying of cancer slowly, then I want to change my mind or do this? And it's like, well, if I'm dying slowly, but if I'm alive and if I'm mentally well, as far as I understand, we still can do donations and surrogates and all the rest of it, which I don't understand any of it, to be honest, because if you can do that afterwards, I don't know, it's all a big mess. But anyway, there's lots of grey areas, like for example, if we're both alive and well and we want to have a baby, but for some reason I have cancer and get everything taken out, so I can't carry the baby, can we then get a surrogate then to carry the baby for us, like as a married couple being happily together? Or if Jeremy dies but again I can't carry, can I get a surrogate? Like there's so many different grey areas to this. I know it's so morbid and depressing to think about and to talk about, but honestly once you start talking about this, you kind of think about every single eventuality and like, well, what if this happens and what if that happens? Because this for me has felt like the biggest decision so far. Like doing the IVF in the first place was a big decision. Doing the testing, it kind of seemed obvious it was a big decision, but it kind of seemed like the right thing to do, whereas this has just like knocked me for six. Like I said, I was crying non-stop when we had this night, the conversations. It took me ages to kind of come to the decision that yes, okay, I would say yes, and then I've completely forgotten what I was going to say then, but it's like a huge decision, and it's got huge implications. So like depending on what we say now, it's kind of final, because if you say yes before doing the embryos, you can then change your mind to a no later on, but if you say no beforehand, you can never go back and say yes, apparently. So like it's just a huge decision that can affect both of our lives in the future, and I feel like most people saying no is bizarre to me. And then also if people have said yes but they've not asked these questions, I don't know if we're overthinking it or what, but anyway, so we had a pretty shit day yesterday. We both reacted pretty badly to it in different ways. We react differently, but my personal reaction was that like I was shocked and then crying and then worried, and then my body was like shaking from stress. Like my whole body was just shaking, and I was like, I just need to, like, this energy needs to get out of me. So I went on Insight Timer and listened to Sean J. Moore, who's part of the Warrior Flow thing, but his voice is so calming, so I put him on for 20 minutes, laid on the sofa and just like calmed my body down. And it's so interesting that like years ago, if I was stressed and like shaking so much, like uncontrollable shaking, and I just had to deal with it until I was okay again. But now being like, okay, if you listen to something calming and like lay down and try and relax and breathe, you can get rid of it much quicker. So it only took like 10 minutes probably for the shaking to stop, and then another 10 minutes to actually calm down. And we had lots of conversations with my brother and my sister-in-law who we're staying with Jeremy, and it was just a lot, honestly. Like it was just kind of, even though she'd said to us, if you do this it might take 4 to 6 weeks, we rushed the bloods, we rushed the counselling, we rushed doing the paperwork and making that big decision, we rushed all of these things, and then there was multiple times that apricity have said to us, you've done that, you can start in November, we've done that, now you can start in November, you've done that, you can start in November. So to now be like, well, actually, you probably can't start in November, and you probably can't do December either, so it's going to be January. It's like, well, why didn't they tell us this months ago when we started the process? Why didn't they do this ages ago? And I think they just presume that everybody says no. But then if there are people like me who say yes, well, then they're not prepared for it at all, and they don't know the answers to the questions that we have, and it was just a weird experience. So since yesterday when we had that news, we also messaged them asking certain questions like, okay, well, if we decide to say no, because I think if we say no, it only affects Jeremy's chance of using the embryos in the future and not mine, because like I was saying, if, for example, if Jeremy dies, they could put the embryos back into me, and therefore we're not using a surrogate, and therefore it's not a donor. But then if I potentially can't carry, then we'd have to use a surrogate, and then it is a donor. So there's things like that that aren't explained. So we asked Apricity, the nurse that we spoke to, about these certain like grey areas that we had. She's been back and forth with King's. She even asked the HFEA, who's like the governing body in England, about these questions. They came back and said they give guidance on what people should do, but it's up to the individual companies as to what they do. So it's up to King's basically. So with a lot of back and forth, she said to us that King's is going to send us, well, it's going to send her an email, I think, or a letter or something with lots of individual bullet points and like all the information about surrogacy, because it just seems like they kind of don't, it's just kind of like yes or no, you don't really have all the information provided. Sorry, I feel really distracted and like not making sense today. But anyway, so she's going to wait for an email from King's with all the bullet points and all the information about the surrogacy, and then from there we're going to make a decision. And she works Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so we've not heard from her today. So either we'll hear from her on Wednesday or on Friday if they manage to get all that information back in time. If they do, depending on what they say, we can either still say yes and wait until January and go away for 2 months, or we could redo the form, say no, send it back to Apricity, who've got to approve it, and then they send it to King's and they've got to approve it, to then maybe start in on like Sunday, Monday. But I remember during one of our previous meetings, they said that we need to rush things because King's need all of the information, all of the forms, everything back a week before you start treatment. So obviously if we do the forms on Friday, it's not going to be a week before the Monday, like 2 days later, to start treatment. So I think either way we're fucked. And then also my periods vary between like 28 days and 34 days. I'm due on like Sunday, but my boobs are already getting big and sore. I already have sore tummy, so I think it's going to be in the next couple of days. So I think even if we try and rush this, I might still come on like tomorrow or Thursday or Friday and then not have chance to get all this done anyway. So then in that case, I think we're just going to stick to a yes and push it back until January. So there's just so much going on. And like I was saying to Jeremy, the whole point of coming back to England 2 weeks before treatment was to be like calm and relaxed and chill out and like look after myself. And it's just been not that. Like yesterday was so stressful. Like I said, my body was like shaking uncontrollably due to stress and anxiety. And like I've been crying again today because of it. And it's just like so much stress that I just didn't want to be happening like a couple of days before we potentially start treatment. So if any of this made any sense, basically we've got to wait to hear back from King's. If we decide to change it to a no based on what they say, we've got to do the paperwork and everything by Friday, but then I still don't know if they'll accept that because it's not a week before we start treatment, and then potentially start treatment on Sunday. If I start my period earlier, if they come back and it's not the answers that we hoped for, if we don't hear anything until next week, once I've already started my period, any of these scenarios that could happen, we're going to have to start in January and do something else for November and December. So it's once again just like another curveball, another thing that's not as we planned, as we expected, especially because, you know, a week ago or something, they're like, yeah, you're fine to start next week. Yeah, everything's fine. You've like done all of the things, jumped through all the hoops, and even got in the training about how to use the injections, and then actually, no, you probably can't do it. So it's just really frustrating. And the other thing I was telling Jeremy actually is that I now feel like stress on myself of being like, oh my God, body, don't start my period until Monday. Don't start my period until Monday. And I'm like wishing my body not to have my period, which is like the most natural thing, and I can't obviously stop it. And I know that if I come on my period like tomorrow, for example, I'm going to be sad and annoyed and disappointed with myself and my body, and like for like not giving us the option of doing this, which is also a weird kind of mindfuck, because you're kind of like criticizing your body for working naturally and doing what's supposed to do. So it's just an absolute big mess. So yeah, no idea what's going to happen. I will keep you updated. Okay guys, the lighting is terrible, I know, but it's nice and warm in here, so you're gonna have to deal with it. But the last couple of days has been an absolute roller coaster nightmare, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have to break this all up. I thought it was just gonna be a quick and easy, get home, okay, we can do it moving forward. But obviously we talked about what's happened. I don't even remember where we're at, but basically, because of our consent forms and us saying that if one of us dies, we could give the embryos to the other person, they said that it would take 4 to 6 weeks to get the blood results back, even though they said to us plenty of times you can start in November. Then they said, actually, you can't start in November, it's going to have to be January. So then we were like, well, what if we change our consent forms so that Jeremy says yes and I say no? Because basically that means that I can carry, if Jeremy dies, I can carry a baby in my body, but I can't use a surrogate. And if I die, Jeremy can never use the embryos. And if for whatever reason I can't carry, we could not use a surrogate. And so we decided to go ahead and do that, but it was so frustrating because like 2 weeks ago we made this huge decision in the first place, and as you know, I was crying all day and I found it really hard and it was really upsetting, and like I just was not happy about making that decision. Decided to say yes, and then 2 weeks later, and like a week before I'm due to start my period, I had to make that same decision again, but this time it was harder. It was like, you can either say yes, well, you can either say no and start on Monday, like in a week's time, less than a week's time, or if you say yes...
Well, that wasn't even guaranteed, but yeah.
That wasn't even guaranteed, yeah. Or the yes option. So, because we'd ask, that was it, we'd ask questions about, for example, if we're both still alive, but if for whatever reason I can't carry, can we then get a surrogate? Or if Jeremy dies, can I get a surrogate if I can't carry for whatever reason? And then so Sophie at Apricity had to go back and do more research, ask more questions, and then she came back and said, well, actually guys, it would be more tests, because I've just gone and done more tests, but she said no, actually it would be more tests for Rosie and more tests for Jeremy, and we'd have to do it in January, and then we'd have to come back 3 months later because the embryos would be in quarantine. We'd have to come back 3 months later for more blood tests, and it would cost more money. It costs about $2,500 more. More tests, more money, more time is kind of the theme of this whole process. Like I've said it so many times, haven't I? More money, more time, more tests. So I was furious because I'd had to make this really hard decision, and then 2 weeks later make that decision again with even higher stakes. It's either like you start next week or you start in 2 months, and it's $2,500 extra, and it's coming back again 3 months later. And so I was furious that like they didn't know this beforehand. These rules changed in July, I think it was, this year. So I was like, why the fuck don't they know what they're talking about? Why the fuck didn't they get training? How is it like you either say no or we have no fucking clue? Like I was absolutely furious, wasn't I? Yeah. Like my body, like I never get that angry, really, do I? I was like shaking, crying, I like hysterically couldn't breathe, like hysterically crying that I couldn't breathe. I was like, and Joe was like, okay, breathe, and I just couldn't calm myself down. So we went for a walk, and I was crying for about an hour, like just could not control my breathing, and my, like I was just, the thing is, I was like crying and upset and angry and frustrated about the whole situation, and then as that started to like calm down, I was then just getting angrier and angrier and being like, what the fuck are they talking about? Like if they're, you know, they're meant to be counsellors or like advisors, how can they advise you if they don't know what the second option is? It's like plan A, like either you say no or we have no fucking clue what we're talking about. And I was just like, this is ridiculous, this is outrageous. Like, and the thing that annoys me as well is that had we said yes and not asked those additional questions, so we paid $700 extra for my bloods, we'd waited until January and we'd done that whole thing. If, for example, in a year's time we wanted to use a surrogate, we wouldn't have been able to because we didn't do the extra tests for me, we didn't do the extra tests for Jeremy, we didn't fill out some of the forms, we didn't pay the extra money, and we also didn't come back 3 months later to do the additional tests. So had we listened to them and said yes and not asked these additional questions, we wouldn't have even been able to use the surrogate stuff. So it's just like, I just lost all faith in them. I was just like, do you know what, fuck this bullshit, I'm not doing it anymore. Like, honestly, I'd had enough, hadn't I? Yeah. I was absolutely furious. And I just feel like they, like, I'm going to send them a good old email. But, like, I feel like up until now they've done so well of like reassuring us and like information and letting us know what was going on and like consultations and meetings, but like we should have been told this right at the beginning, not like a week before, well 2 weeks before we start treatment, and then potentially put it off, especially because we had to wait for the EVC stuff with the Kings. Anyway, it's just been, so then that was on Wednesday. And then so we decided, do you know what, fuck it. And like, as I was filling out the form to change the mind to say no, I was like crying uncontrollably. I just found it really hard because it's not really what I want to do, but I kind of feel trapped now and I feel pressured because it's like, we've gotten our hopes up to start next week. So the only way we can start next week potentially is to say no. So I just kind of felt like I had to do it, and I'm still annoyed that like I don't know, whatever, it's done now. So we sent the form, I signed the form, Jeremy signed the form, and then the woman in apricity had to sign the form and check it and send it to Kings. And apparently there's a lot of back and forth between them. And yesterday we didn't hear any news, so then the whole of yesterday we were both kind of felt like, what was the
whole week?
The whole week, yeah, but especially yesterday was just like trapped and like paralysed, like we can't move forward, we can't do anything, because it's like even going out for a walk, it's like I don't want to go out for a walk and then get the news that like we can or we can't start. So it's like we stayed in all day. I didn't really get much work done, I couldn't really focus, I was just watching shit on TV just to like block my mind from thinking about what the fuck is going on, because I'd even looked at flights. I was like, do you know what, fuck this, let's go to Thailand for 2 months and then we'll do it in January or even next summer. And like we just have not known what to do. And I think especially because we were like, before this we were like, we'll go back to England, I'll have 2 weeks to like relax and do yoga and like meditation and get some massages, do acupuncture, do all these things to be in the best place possible. And then actually what's happened is we're stressed as fuck, and it's now Friday, we found out today that we can start treatment this weekend, which is potentially going to be Sunday or Monday. So like finding out 3 days beforehand that we can start treatment has been stressful to say the least. So basically yesterday, like I said, we waited the whole day, didn't hear anything, and then this morning the girl from apricity called us and said, okay, you can start treatment. The nurse in Kings can only validate the papers on Tuesday, and I'm probably going to need to start treatment on Monday. And she was like, we're still going to go ahead with it, it'll be fine. That's the scenario basically.
Yeah.
So it has just been really, really shit, really tough, and we've just kind of been hanging around for like this past week, just not really knowing what we're doing, where we stand, you know, what our plans are. But I'm going to close this vlog off here because I'm going to have broken this up into like 15 different parts because it's so long. But I've signed us up for acupuncture today, and I'm going to give myself a massage tomorrow, and then probably start treatment on Monday. So I'm maybe going to vlog that before treatment, I don't even know anymore. This has just been a complete mess and not at all what we had planned. But the plan now is to relax this weekend and prepare myself for like injections starting Monday and scans starting Monday and all of it to get going. So, any thoughts? We had a fun week?
Oh yeah, awesome.
Anyway, thank you for watching. I know this is like a complete mess and I don't even know what order this is all going to go in, but thanks for watching. Make sure you subscribe so you can follow along on our wonderful journey of trying to make some fucking babies that we're probably never going to use. And we'll see you in the next one. Was that a good ending? Can you sense the frustration there? No, we're fine. We are fine. We need to do some yoga and meditation. But thanks for watching. See you in the next one.